I guess there is an entire division in the Marvel Studios with the sole purpose of making presentations. If you don't know what I am talking about, remember the presentation the collector had ready to show Quill, Gamora and the others summarizing the Infinity Stones.
Observe.
Or how about the 3D pictorial representation of the timeline with Infinity Stones, this time presented by the Ancient One in Avengers Endgame.
The Infinity Stones create what you experience as the flow of time.
Marvel movies have had a lot of exposition in their weird comic book type plots, and each time they find a new and innovative way to make it presentable because, flashbacks can only take you so far. Anyway, that is a completely separate issue. Hello, namaskar, welcome, swagatam. Today in Tinsel Talk, I'll talk about the series Loki. The season finale has aired quite some time ago, and with the confirmation of a second season, I have had time to think about it and brew my feelings on the finale and the season 1 as a whole. But first of all, a huge spoiler alert. Loki has been a ride to remember in the typical Marvel Cinematic Universe fashion. A 6-episode mini-series about a character who is arguably the most liked negative character in the whole of the MCU. But talking about the season finale wouldn't be complete without a prologue of my overall feelings up to the end of episode 5. Episode 1, aside from introducing this weird time variance authority and all the characters and agents linked with the TVA, it gave us an insight into Loki's mind. Remember, that insight was not only an obligatory recap per se, but was actually a purposeful story driver. Because the Loki that episode 1 brought to the TVA is not the Loki that we have seen being killed by Thanos. This Loki needed to look at the larger picture beyond his selfish motive to rule. Having just been beaten by the Avengers, he would be ready to exact vengeance and hatch another nefarious plan. But instead, he is brought to the TVA and shown in graphic details his destiny. He is also given a purpose to help the TVA hunt down another deviant, who it so happens is another variant of Loki. We strongly root with Loki at this point. His emotional ups and downs and the ultimate realization that he had done some pretty bad things, but he did not really enjoy evil. Moving forward, in the episode 2, the bond between Loki and Mobius, the buddy cop dynamic is developed a bit more, but the height of this episode's intensity is in the revelation of the variant Loki, who is actually Sylvie.
This isn't about you.
In episode 3, we get some idea about Sylvie's personality, her motivation and what her actual plan might have been. But more importantly, Sylvie and Loki spend some time together in a world facing its own apocalypse.
Not bad.
In the same world, in episode 4, while Loki and Sylvie believe that they will not survive this apocalypse, they realize that they share a bond much deeper and more profound, a nexus level union, which shouldn't be. Are you with me till now? Because till this point in the show, we have a strong story of a self-discovery, how a villainous character can be redefined and made into something completely different. Later in the episode 4, the timekeepers turn out to be fake. Loki and Mobius are both pruned. All in all, a cliffhanger of suspense. What is not a suspense is how much I appreciate you guys checking out my videos, and it would mean so much more if you subscribe to my channel, The Versatile Doctor. The best episode of the show undoubtedly was episode 5. The episode that reveals the eventuality of Loki's journey, the convergence with Sylvie's fate and the ultimate glorious purpose. With episode 5 being this epic precursor to the story's conclusion, I was ready to have my mind blown in the season finale, to have some mind-boggling revelations and unfolding of unfathomable events. Miss Minutes, the cartoon clock of exposition in the TVA, makes an appearance in the season finale to lure Loki and Sylvie with rewards of their heart's desires, if only they stopped in their path and didn't pursue the man behind all of this. The moment this started, my mind began wandering. Till now, the person responsible for all of the TVA hasn't been revealed. In all probability, Miss Minutes should be working for that person. But trying to stop two Lokis from trying to reach the end of their path for which they have endured so much, that is idiotic. And that made me think that Miss Minutes might not be working for the guy in charge after all. Or at least partially, she has her own agenda. But putting that aside, we finally get to the person responsible for the TVA. He Who Remains. Anyone who knows anything about Marvel Comics knows that He Who Remains is one of the many avatars of the character of Kang the Conqueror. So Kang, who shall not be named so at least in this season, is played by Jonathan Majors. What follows is a series of explanations and one very self-absorbed 3D PowerPoint presentation, like the one I was talking about in the beginning of this video.
He discovered that there were universes stacked on top of it.
In the 3D presentation, we do see foreshadowing for Kang's appearance. Few of the variants of He Who Remains don the typical and well-recognizable helmet of Kang. The crux of the matter is He Who Remains created the TVA to keep the other timelines in check, specifically to keep the variants of himself from combating each other in an interdimensional war for supremacy. So, is the big reveal and big climax of the season going to be Kang's appearance and Loki's first battle with him? No, the Lokis aren't going to combat Kang and set everything in order. They are going to, effectively what the Lokis do is to set up a whole new generation of MCU movies and shows for probably the next 10 or more years and dozens of movies and shows to come. And that is the biggest disappointment of this episode. Well, the show as a whole in my eyes. Loki, the series, which started as a unique and interesting journey of Loki, the season ended not at the end of the journey but at an unexpected divergence of the characters. The end essentially is a setting stage for the Marvel Multiverse. I guess that is what we should call the Marvel Cinematic Universe now. Marvel Multiverse. But allow me to elaborate what I felt with the more than 20 minutes long sequence of Loki and Sylvie interacting with He Who Remains. First of all, the conviction of Jonathan Majors' character is unmistakably the only reason why the exposition didn't feel that long or boring. Yes, the PowerPoint presentation did help, but keeping that aside and keeping aside all the weird humor of the character, when He Who Remains talked business, he exuded the timeless ambition, the wisdom, the strength, and above all the vulnerability of someone who is literally all-powerful. And his story makes sense. Trust me, the story is cleverly written and it makes more sense the second or third time when you watch it. Until now, we have seen time in the MCU as a linear entity with a beginning and an end. Where that end is, no one knows. But now, in the citadel of He Who Remains, we are at the end of time as every living thing in this universe knows it. And at the end is the one person who keeps this time running without chaotic branches. And the end is not an end at all. The timeline is not a line at all. It is a circle. Probably the Big Bang was the beginning of time, and then maybe millions and millions of years later there would be another Big Bang annihilating all that is present and start the loop again. Because thinking of time as a circle is the only way how a singular entity can be considered to be the hand of destiny, to write how everything begins and how everything ends. His only job is to make sure there are no unexpected detours from what is written. Anything that isn't supposed to be, that is sent as food for Alioth. And Alioth in turn powers the entire procedure. Lokis are possibly the only individuals who evaded Alioth for a significant duration for He Who Remains to take note of them and think about Lokis as his successors. And that is the whole story. How the story ends depends on how Loki and Sylvie decide to proceed. And that is all that the season finale of Loki season 1 gives us. A possibility of the future war. Sylvie's decision is made, but the repercussions will be explored in the next season. The season finale ended with one of the most ungratifying mid-credit scenes of all times. Loki will return in season 2, or rather, this unfinished story will be taken forward at a later time. The future has opened up the possibilities of new dimensions and new characters and new storylines in the Marvel Multiverse, and all because Loki and Sylvie disrupted the TVA. So, Loki's season 1 finale, despite being an awesome episode, despite having given us a lot to think about, it was unfulfilling as a season finale. In all senses, the pinnacle of Loki season 1 was in episode 5, and the finale is just an epic prologue to what is about to come rather than being the end of season 1. The interaction between the Lokis and He Who Remains isn't the only thing going on in the finale. We have Mobius, who got back from the void to the TVA to confront Judge Ravonna Renslayer. That is another subplot which could have used a resolution or closure, but well, like the White Vision was in WandaVision, Renslayer is in Loki.
I am Vision.
Going off to an uncertain fate with an unfinished story. Renslayer's story was still unresolved. We have no idea what she has been thinking ever since the Timekeepers were revealed to be fake. We even don't know up to what extent she knows about the reality of the TVA. Whether she knew that returning from the void was possible if one had a temp pad, or did she know about He Who Remains, or well, all in all, we know next to nothing about Renslayer. So we have to wait until the next season. But before the next season of Loki, we have a lot of ground to cover. Black Widow is set in the past, so regardless of how it was as a movie, it doesn't matter in terms of what we have to expect to see in Phase 4. But we have the Hawkeye series to look forward to. Then of course, a Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness and Spider-Man No Way Home. These will deal with the characters that we know. And there is the Eternals movie coming out, Shang-Chi, Moon Knight and the She-Hulk. All this to say that the Marvel Multiverse is filled to its brim with offerings we can't wait to see. I wished the one that kicked the whole new world off, this show, Loki, I wish it had a more fulfilling conclusion. Well, that is just what I think. Loki, the series, was an amazing and entertaining entry to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The story, the dialogue, the visuals and the music, all top-notch, unparalleled and undoubtedly great piece of television. It is all the more impressive to see how this concept of a singular timeline and how the TVA deals with variants ties up with the time travel elements we saw in Avengers Endgame. Think about it. Captain America went back in time and replaced all the Infinity Stones to the place and time from where they were taken earlier. So the timeline was undisturbed. The only uncorrectable mistake was Loki's disappearance from that timeline with the Tesseract. So obviously the TVA jumped in and corrected that timeline.
On behalf of the Time Variance Authority, I hereby arrest you for crimes against the sacred timeline.
I beg your pardon?
So the events of the original MCU timeline, the Infinity Saga that we know so far, is still unspoiled and existing.
Reset the timeline.
The events of Loki exist beyond the definition of time. No one ages in the TVA, but when the TVA agents are jumping into the timeline for correction or to apprehend a time criminal, that is real time, and that is the time when they age. Which explains why Sylvie, who was abducted as a child, was able to grow up as she was living in the real time, hidden and jumping through 1,000 world-ending events. But child Loki, he was abducted at a similar age. He was pruned and dumped into the void beyond the timeline, so he couldn't age. Loki's story and all the layers and depths are immersive and amazingly intricate for a mere 6-episode miniseries. You only have to open your mind to the possibilities. There was some misplaced comedy, and at one point the many Lokis felt like too many Lokis. But overall, each episode was good in its own right because of the amazing cast. Owen Wilson, Tom Hiddleston, Sophia Martino, Jonathan Majors, Gugu Ambata Rao, Wunmi Mosaku and Richard E. Grant all had their moments to shine, alongside things we never even dreamt of witnessing, like an Easter egg moment of Throg, the Frog of Thunder, or Kroki, the alligator Loki. Only and only for the exposition-heavy finale, which felt like an introduction to Kang the Conqueror rather than the conclusion of Loki's story, I will give the mini-series Loki 7 thumbs ups out of 10. What do you think? How do you feel about the Loki finale? As shocked as I was? You were watching Tinsel Talk, where I share my views on the latest movies and shows. But if you don't agree with my opinions or simply wish to speak your mind, jump right into the comment section and let me know your thoughts. As always, I'm eagerly looking forward to your feedback and comments. If you like this video, please do leave a thumbs up and share it with all your friends to keep the discussion going. This is all from my side for today. I'll be back with another video or another review. This is Dr. Abhinav Atul signing off. It is my pride and privilege to be able to connect with you through this video. Namaskar. While you are still on YouTube, how about you check out this video which YouTube thinks you would like. And right here in this playlist link, you will find all my Tinsel Talk videos.